The scent of pine needles and damp earth filled my lungs as I stood concealed at the forest's edge. Before me, the annual gathering of the northern packs had transformed the familiar woods into a pulsing, shadowed entity. Hundreds of werewolves moved with a fluid, purposeful grace between the ancient trees, their murmured conversations a low rumble beneath the crackle of bonfires. The flames cast long, dancing shadows across faces that had never held a welcome for me. I pulled my threadbare jacket tighter, the chill of the autumn evening seeping through the worn fabric. My grandmother's silver pendant rested against my chest, a crescent moon cradling a small, milky stone. "Remember, Evelyn," she had whispered in her final days, her voice like dry leaves, "even the smallest light shines brightest in the deepest darkness." My fingers found the familiar metal, seeking the comfort of her memory, a ritual repeated countless times over 23 years. A lifetime of existing on the periphery had honed my ability to blend into backgrounds, to become a ghost among my own kind. It was not a desire to vanish, but a survival tactic. Disappearing was less painful than being seen, assessed, and invariably found lacking. There you are. The voice belonged to Sophie, the sole person in our pack who made a consistent effort to seek me out. Her dark curls framed a face usually bright with amusement, but now held a trace of urgency. "You're missing the feast." "I'm not missing anything," I replied, my gaze fixed on the vibrant, alien scene before us. "They are undoubtedly missing me, which is precisely how everyone prefers it." Sophie sighed, a soft exhalation of frustration. "The alphas are calling for all unmated wolves to present themselves." "That includes you, Evie." A familiar knot of dread tightened in my stomach. The summit, for all its talk of diplomacy and trade, was fundamentally a grand, ritualized matchmaking event. Alphas from disparate territories paraded their eligible wolves, hoping to fortify bloodlines and secure alliances through new bonds. "What's the point?" I asked, finally turning to face her. "We both know what happens when I try to shift. For most werewolves, the first shift at puberty is a natural, if painful, inevitability. For me, it had been a cycle of torment. My body would attempt the change, bones cracking, skin stretching, only to shudder to a halt before completion. A partial shift, a grotesque in-between state that left me trembling and weak, branded as a failure by both natures. Sophie's expression softened with a pity I'd learned to accept from her alone. "Maybe this time will be different. After 23 years of the same result, I doubt it." A horn sounded in the heart of the clearing, 3 long, mournful notes that vibrated through the trees, the summoning. "Come on," Sophie urged, taking my hand firmly. "Alpha Harrison will notice if you're absent." Harrison Blake, our pack's alpha, possessed little patience for perceived weakness, and for me he held a special, simmering disdain. My parents had been revered warriors, their deaths in defense of our territory a celebrated tragedy. Their daughter's chronic inability to fully shift was, in his eyes, a stain on their legacy, an embarrassment he tolerated with visible strain. As we approached the main clearing, the crowd parted for Sophie with instinctive deference. As the daughter of our pack's beta, she carried an unassuming authority. I trailed in her wake, a phantom attached to her light, feeling the weight of sidelong glances and hissed whispers. "Is that the Blake defective? Still can't shift properly. A waste of a strong bloodline." The words were barbs, their sting familiar but never dull. I kept my chin level, my posture straight. The pendant warmed faintly against my skin. In the center of the clearing, illuminated by the largest fire, stood the Council of Alphas and their seconds. 12 of the most powerful werewolves on the continent formed a loose, imposing circle. Harrison's figure was unmistakable, broad-shouldered, with silver-streaked black hair and an aura of severe authority. Beside him stood his son, Nathaniel. He had inherited his father's strong build and piercing gray eyes, but none of the older man's cruelty. Our gazes met briefly across the shimmering heat of the flames. Nathaniel offered a single, nearly imperceptible nod before looking away, a formal acknowledgement that stung with its coolness. We had grown up as children together, but as his father's heir, Nathaniel had responsibilities that did not include public association with the pack's greatest disappointment. Unmated wolves stepped forward. Harrison's voice, deep and commanding, silenced the murmur of the crowd. Sophie gave my hand a final, encouraging squeeze before releasing me. I moved to join the line of young wolves, positioning myself at the very end, wishing the earth would open and swallow me whole. The inspection began. One by one, wolves were called forward. Some were asked to shift, their forms exploding into being with practiced ease, coats of russet, ebony, and slate gray shimmering in the firelight. Others were questioned about their skills, their lineage, their ambitions. The air thrummed with a tension that had little to do with romance and everything to do with power, alliance, and survival. As the line dwindled, my anxiety crescendoed into a silent scream. The urge to flee, to vanish into the endless forest and never return, was almost overwhelming. But the pack, for all its coldness, was the only home I had ever known. Evelyn Blake. Harrison's voice made my name sound like an indictment. I stepped forward, my legs trembling beneath the simple fabric of my dress. The circle of alphas regarded me with a spectrum of expressions: clinical curiosity, open dismissal, vague recognition. "Your heritage?" asked a sharp-eyed alpha from the Western Territories, a woman with streaks of gray in her braided hair. "Daughter of Michael and Sarah Blake," I answered, unable to keep the pride from my voice. My parents' heroism still commanded respect. Even years later, I saw the recognition flicker in several faces. "And your wolf?" This from a tall alpha with a jagged scar running down his cheek. "Donovan, from the Southern Claw." I swallowed, my mouth dry. I experienced difficulty achieving a complete shift. A ripple of conversation moved through the onlookers. Harrison's jaw tightened visibly. "Show us," Donovan commanded, his voice a low growl. My heart plummeted. This was the public humiliation I had dreaded. "Alpha Donovan," Harrison interjected, a strained diplomacy in his tone. "Perhaps we should move on. There are other candidates." Donovan's eyes narrowed. "I've heard rumors of your pack harboring a half-shifter I wish to see for myself." I stood frozen, panic icing my veins. From the corner of my eye, I saw Nathaniel take a half-step forward, only to be stopped by a subtle, sharp gesture from his father. "Shift," Donovan repeated, the word final. Closing my eyes, I surrendered to the inevitable pain. I reached inward, finding the core of energy every werewolf possesses. I coaxed it forth, feeling the initial, deceptive surge of power. My bones began their painful reorganization, my skin prickling as the phantom sensation of fur teased at its surface. It began as it always did, with a terrible, promising violence, and then the resistance, like slamming into an invisible, unyielding wall. My body shuddered, caught in the agonizing limbo between forms. A cry was torn from my throat as I dropped to my knees, the familiar, soul-crushing failure washing over me. Through a haze of pain and shame, I saw the disgust on Donovan's face, the pity on others. "Enough." The voice was Nathaniel's, firm and clear. "She has shown you what you asked to see." Donovan scoffed. "This is what comes of coddling weakness. In my territory, she would have been cast out years ago. Cast out, alone." The words crystallized my deepest fear into a sharp, chilling point. Then something shifted. The pendant against my chest erupted in searing heat, pulsing in rhythm with my frantic heartbeat. A surge of power, vast and alien and utterly mine, exploded from its center, shattering the internal barrier that had always contained me. This pain was different, clean, clarifying, overwhelming. The world blurred, tilted, and reformed. Gasps echoed around me, the very air seeming to change. The agony vanished, replaced by a profound, dizzying sense of rightness, of completion. I opened my eyes to a world remade in exquisite detail. Scents were a complex tapestry, sounds a layered symphony. I looked down, where my human hands should have been were paws. Paws covered in fur as pure and white as fresh-fallen snow. I had shifted, completely. A stunned silence had swallowed the clearing. I raised my head, feeling powerful new muscles coil beneath unfamiliar fur. The alphas stared, their faces masks of shock and something else, something that looked like awe. "A white Luna," breathed the female alpha from the west, her voice hushed with reverence. One by one, the alphas lowered their gazes, then impossibly they began to kneel. Harrison's face was bloodless. Nathaniel stood beside him, his gray eyes wide with stunned wonder. Even Donovan, moments ago advocating for my exile, slowly sank to one knee, his head bowed. In the reflective surface of a rain puddle near my paws, I saw her. A wolf of luminous white, with eyes that held an inner moonglow, mirroring the pendant that still hung somehow around my neck. The White Luna, a figure of legend, a prophecy made flesh, said to appear only in times of cataclysmic change or grave peril. Somehow, impossibly, that wolf was me. A faint rustle, nearly inaudible, came from the dark undergrowth beyond the firelight. My new acute hearing pinpointed it instantly. A foreign, oily scent drifted on the breeze, threatening and wrong. I turned my head toward the darkness, a low growl building instinctively in my throat. For a fleeting heartbeat, I saw them, twin points of darkness watching from the shadows, eyes that seemed not to reflect light but to absorb it. Then they were gone. But the pricking sensation of being watched, of a profound wrongness, remained etched along my spine. Dawn broke over the encampment in a spectacle of crimson and gold, but I had not slept. After the revelation at the fire, I had spent the deep night hours in my wolf form, learning the boundaries of this new reality with Sophie as my patient guide. The feeling of wholeness, of a fractured self finally knitted together, was intoxicating. Now back in human form within my modest tent, I sat cross-legged on my sleeping mat, examining my own trembling hands. They seemed pale and ordinary, but the memory of the white wolf was a phantom limb, a potent, thrumming awareness just beneath my skin. They're waiting for you. Sophie's voice was uncharacteristically somber as she slipped inside. Dark smudges beneath her eyes mirrored my own exhaustion. The council has convened an emergency session. My stomach coiled into a familiar knot, though the reason was now terrifyingly new. Why? She gave me a look that stripped away any pretense of ignorance. You know why, Evie, a white Luna hasn't manifested in over 2 centuries. The last one led the packs through the Great War against the Shadowed Ones. Everyone knows the stories, I finished, the words feeling hollow. They were bedtime tales, legends to inspire pups, not a destiny. It must be a mistake, a genetic anomaly. Your wolf is white, Sophie whispered, the word heavy with reverence and a trace of fear. Not cream, not silver, not ash blonde. White, there is no mistake in that. My fingers rose to my grandmother's pendant, still warm against my skin. Had she known, was this the reason for her cryptic insistence that I never remove it? What do they want from me? I asked, though a cold part of me already feared the answer. To test you, she said, finally meeting my eyes, to verify what you are. I stood, smoothing the wrinkles from my simple dress. And if I am what they think, Sophie's gaze was steady, solemn, then everything changes, Evie, for you, for the packs, for all of us. The camp outside was transformed. Overnight, knowledge had spread like wildfire. Werewolves from every territory watched my passage with a new, intense focus. Some bowed their heads respectfully as I passed. Others reached out not to touch me, but as if to brush the air around me, seeking some blessing from my proximity. It was unnerving. Make way. The command cut through the gathering crowd. Nathaniel shouldered through the throng, his presence creating an immediate path. The council is waiting. Our eyes met, and for the first time in years, he did not look through me or away. A bridge had been burned between us last night, and the landscape of our relationship was irrevocably altered. Nate, I said, the childhood nickname feeling foreign yet comforting. What is happening? A muscle twitched in his jaw. Politics, he answered, his voice low. And fear, come, I will accompany you. As we walked, the crowd parted more readily for him, a deference born of recognized rank rather than the odd uncertainty that followed me. They are divided, he murmured, leaning close so only I could hear. Some believe you are the true Luna returned. Others think it an elaborate ruse, a power play by my father. It's not a ruse, I said, a defensive heat in my voice that surprised me. I don't understand it, but when I shifted, it felt right, like fitting into a skin I was always meant to wear. Nathaniel's stern expression softened a fraction. I believe you, Evie. I've always believed there was more to you than met the eye. The unexpected sincerity in his tone sent a flutter through my chest that had nothing to do with fear or magic. I pushed the feeling aside. Now was not the time. The central pavilion loomed before us, its canvas walls seeming to hold the weight of the debate within. 2 stern-faced guards flanked the entrance, their postures stiffening as we approached. Inside, voices clashed. Cannot simply accept without proof. The signs are clear, then let her be tested. The voices fell silent as we entered. The 12 alphas were seated in a tense semicircle. In the center stood an ancient woman I had never seen. Her silver hair cascaded like a waterfall down her back, and her face was a map of lines that spoke of profound wisdom, not frailty. Evelyn Blake, she said, her voice surprisingly strong and clear. I am Elder Maeve. I inclined my head in instinctive respect. Elder, do you know why you have been summoned? I assume it concerns the events of last night. Not the events, corrected Donovan, his scar looking livid in the tense filtered light. What you claim happened. I felt a spark of anger. I claimed nothing. I shifted. You all witnessed it. A conveniently timed shift, remarked another alpha, a woman with sharp, calculating features, after 23 years of failure. Elder Maeve raised a gnarled hand, and the murmurs ceased instantly. There are ways to ascertain the truth. The White Luna is more than mere appearance. She carries the blessing of the moon goddess herself, abilities that transcend ordinary shifting. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. What abilities? Healing, Maeve stated. Command, sight beyond sight. The specifics vary with each Luna, but the essence is constant, power tempered by compassion, strength born of empathy. I recalled the absorbing eyes in the forest, the sense of wrongness. Was that a glimpse of this sight? How do you propose we test for such things? Harrison's voice was carefully neutral, though I detected an undercurrent of tension. Maeve turned her piercing gaze to me. Are you willing, child, to undergo the trials? Every instinct screamed to refuse, to flee from this scrutiny. But the memory of my grandmother's words and the warm weight of the pendant anchored me. Even the smallest light. I will do it, I said, my voice steady. A hint of a smile touched Maeve's weathered lips. Good, the first trial begins at midday. You may choose one to stand as your witness. Without hesitation, I turned. Nathaniel's eyes widened slightly. A ripple of surprise moved through the alphas. Harrison's brows drew together in clear disapproval. My son is heir to the Blake pack, his duties. I accept, Nathaniel interrupted, his gaze locking with mine. Something flared in his eyes, determination, defiance, and a resolve that silenced his father. Harrison's jaw tightened, but he said no more. In the intricate game of power being played, I had just made my first independent move. Midday at the sacred pool, Maeve announced. Until then, Evelyn Blake will prepare in solitude. I was escorted to a small, secluded clearing a short distance from camp, ringed by ancient pines that formed a natural cathedral. The guards left me there, alone with the cacophony of my thoughts and the crushing weight of expectation. I sank onto the moss, pressing my palms to the cool, living earth. Yesterday I was Evelyn, the flawed one. Today I was a symbol, a potential savior, a political piece. The whiplash was dizzying, the forest breathed around me. Birdsong, the scuttle of small creatures, the drone of insects, it was a symphony I had always heard, but now I perceived its intricate layers, as if listening to a conversation in a language I was on the verge of understanding. A twig snapped, sharp and deliberate, my eyes flew open. "I know you're there," I called, rising to my feet. "Show yourself." Silence, thick and waiting, then from between two massive pine trunks a figure emerged. It was not anyone from the packs. A young man, pale as bleached bone, with eyes the color of a starless midnight. He moved with an unsettling, fluid grace. "White Luna," he said, his voice accented, melodic and utterly cold. "My master sends his greetings." A chill, deeper than the autumn air, traced my spine. "Your master," his smile revealed teeth that were just a shade too sharp, too pointed. "The king beyond the veil sends his regards," and a warning. "What king, what veil?" I demanded, fighting the instinct to step back. His very presence felt wrong, the same corrosive wrongness I'd sensed the night before. "He has watched your kind for centuries," the stranger continued, ignoring my questions, "waiting for the White Luna's return, and now you have." His smile widened, predatory, so young, so untested, so vulnerable. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I held my ground. "What does he want?" Those dark, light-absorbing eyes fixed on me. "He offers a choice, Luna. Stand with him when the veil thins, or watch your precious packs burn to ash." Before I could respond, the sound of rushing footsteps shattered the stillness. The stranger's head tilted. "We will meet again," he whispered. Then, impossibly, his form seemed to unravel into the surrounding shadows, leaving no trace. Nathaniel burst into the clearing seconds later, his expression fierce. "Evie, are you unharmed?" He stopped, scanning the area with a hunter's intensity. "Someone was here. I felt it, a coldness." "You felt it?" I asked, my mind reeling. His gaze snapped back to me, confused. "A sudden dread, like ice in my blood. I knew you were in danger." He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "What happened? Who was here?" I opened my mouth, then hesitated. The stranger's threat echoed in my mind. Would sharing it add to the chaos or mark me as a harbinger of doom? "Evie," Nathaniel's voice softened. He placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, his touch warm and solid. "You can trust me." The weight and warmth of his grip grounded me. This was Nathaniel, who had shared his food with me as a child when others tormented me, who had taught me hand-to-hand combat when my inability to shift left me defenseless. "A messenger," I admitted quietly. "Not werewolf, not human." He spoke of a king beyond the veil. "He said his king has been waiting for me. He told me to join them or watch the packs burn." Nathaniel's face darkened. "The unseen court," he breathed. "Old legends speak of a realm parallel to ours, separated by a barrier of veil. They watch from behind it." His grip tightened. "We must inform the council." I caught his arm as he turned. "Wait, what if they think I'm inventing it? Or worse, what if they believe I'm already in league with these things?" He looked down at me, his gray eyes serious. "Do you trust me, Evie?" The question hung between us, woven through with years of silence and unspoken history. "Yes," I answered, the truth of it resonating deep within me. "I always have." Something shifted in his expression, relief, resolve. "Then trust me now. Let me help you navigate this." His hand moved from my shoulder to gently cup my elbow, a gesture of support. "You are not alone anymore." The midday sun broke through the canopy, dappling his face with light. For a moment we stood in a silence filled with everything we had never dared to say. Then the horn sounded, a single, pure, commanding note, the call to trial. "It's time," Nathaniel said, his hand falling reluctantly to his side. "Are you ready?" I was not. How could anyone be ready? But I squared my shoulders, feeling the pendant warm against my skin. As ready as I'll ever be. The sacred pool lay in a silent, moss-cradled hollow, its waters so still they formed a perfect mirror of the sky. Ancient standing stones, each carved with runes I did not know but somehow felt protection, balance, sacrifice, renewal, encircled it like solemn sentinels. The alphas and their seconds formed an outer ring, their faces grave in the stark midday light. Elder Maeve waited at the water's edge, a simple wooden bowl in her hands. Sophie stood beside her father, our Pax Beta, and gave me a small, encouraging nod. I tried to return it, though my limbs felt heavy with dread. "Approach Evelyn Blake," Maeve called, her voice carrying across the clearing. Nathaniel gave my hand a brief, firm squeeze before releasing it. "Remember who you are," he murmured. I walked forward, acutely aware of every eye upon me. The earth seemed to hum beneath my feet, a connection more profound than I had ever felt. "The first trial is one of healing," Maeve declared as I reached her. "The white luna's touch can mend what is broken, restore what is damaged." She dipped the bowl into the pool, filling it with crystalline water, then drew a small silver knife from her robe. Before I could react, she drew the blade across her own palm. Blood, dark and vivid, welled and dripped into the bowl. The water clouded crimson, then cleared, leaving no trace. "Drink," she instructed, offering me the bowl. I hesitated, looking from the water to her bleeding hand. Should I not heal that first? A murmur ran through the gathered wolves. Maeve's eyes crinkled. "The water first, child. It will open your senses to what must be done." Taking a steadying breath, I accepted the bowl and drank. The water was cool, tasteless at first, then carried the essence of deep stone, ancient roots, and something indefinable, like liquid moonlight. It coursed through me, settling into my bones with a resonant hum. "Now," Maeve said, extending her injured hand, "heal." I took her hand in mine. The cut was clean but deep. What was I supposed to do? No one had given me instructions. Closing my eyes, I focused on the feel of her paper-thin skin, the steady pulse beneath my fingers. I thought of healing, of knitting, of closing. Nothing happened. Panic fluttered in my chest. I opened my eyes to find the expectant stares unchanged. "I don't know how," I admitted, my voice small. "You do," Maeve replied, unperturbed. "Look deeper." I closed my eyes again, striving for calm. Look deeper, beyond the fear, beyond the years of feeling fractured. I reached for that core of energy I had finally touched last night. There, amidst the wild power of the wolf, I found a different glimmer, softer, steadier, warmer. I drew it up, willed it to flow down my arm and into my palm where it met Maeve's wound. A gentle warmth bloomed between our joined hands. I felt the skin knitting, cells reuniting. When I opened my eyes, her palm was smooth, unmarked. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her ancient face. "Well done, Luna." Relief, sweet and heady, washed through me, but Maeve was not finished. She turned. "Bring him forward." The crowd parted. Two wolves supported a third between them, a young man, pale and sweating, his right leg bent at a horrifying angle. "Jacob shattered his leg in a hunting fall yesterday," Maeve explained. "Our healers have done what they can, but the bone is fragmented. He will never run properly again, unless—" The implication was a boulder on my chest. This was no simple cut. They laid Jacob on the ground before me. His eyes met mine, filled with pain and a desperate, pleading hope that squeezed my heart. I knelt, placing my hands gently on his ruined leg. Even without my newfound senses, I could feel the devastating damage beneath my palms. "I've never the scale," I whispered to Maeve. "The power is the same, only the need differs." Drawing a deep breath, I closed my eyes and reached for that well of gentle energy. This time, finding it was easier. I drew it forth and channeled it into Jacob. The connection was immediate and overwhelming. I could feel every splintered fragment of bone, every torn ligament, every inflamed nerve as if they were my own. An echo of his agony washed over me, a psychic pain that threatened to drown my consciousness. I pushed through, visualizing the bones fusing, fibers reweaving, inflammation receding. The energy flowed from me like a river. Time lost meaning. When I finally opened my eyes, a profound exhaustion crashed over me. Jacob was staring at his leg in disbelief, flexing it cautiously, then with growing wonder. "It's healed," he breathed, "completely." Awe rippled through the assembly. Even the most skeptical alphas leaned forward, their expressions transformed. I swayed, lightheaded. Nathaniel was instantly at my side, his arm a solid support around my back. "You did it," he murmured, pride clear in his voice. "The second trial," Maeve announced, "is one of command." My heart sank, I was already drained. "The White Luna's voice carries authority," she continued. "When she speaks with true intention, all must listen." She gestured and guards brought forward a cage. Inside was a true wolf, wild and terrified, its amber eyes blazing as it threw itself against the bars. "This one raided our stores. It has attacked 3 who tried to approach." "Command it, Luna, calm its fear, earn its trust." The cage door opened. The wolf burst out, but instead of attacking, it scrambled toward the tree line, intent on escape. "Stop." The word left my lips before thought. The wolf froze mid-stride, muscles locked. It turned its head, wild eyes fixing on me. I took a step forward. "I will not hurt you," I said softly. A connection sparked, not healing but a thread of understanding. I could sense its hunger, its terror, its confusion at our scent. "Come here," the wolf whined, conflicted. Then slowly, ears flattened, body low, it crept toward me. When it reached me, I knelt, our eyes met. Something silent and profound passed between us. The tension drained from its body. It pressed its muzzle against my hand, a gesture of surrender and trust. I stroked its matted gray fur. "You are safe now." The wild wolf settled at my feet, calm as a devoted companion. The clearing was utterly silent. "The trial of command is past," Maeve declared. "One remains." I rose, fatigue weighing every limb. The wolf, my wolf now, it seemed, stayed pressed against my leg. "The final trial," Maeve said, "is the trial of sight. The white Luna sees what is hidden. Find the one among us who is not what they appear to be. Reveal the deception." Panic, sharp and cold. How could I possibly identify a hidden threat among hundreds? The pendant at my throat pulsed warmly. My grandmother's voice seemed to whisper from memory, "Look with more than your eyes." I closed my eyes, reaching not for healing or command, but for a third aspect of this burgeoning power. When I opened them, the world had shifted. Every person glowed with a soft, inner light, the aura of their wolf spirit, all except one. My gaze locked onto a woman standing with the Northern Pack contingent. Where others shimmered, she was cloaked in a writhing, living shadow. "Her," I said, pointing, "the woman in the gray dress." Chaos erupted, the woman's face contorted, features melting and reforming. She tried to flee, but wolves moved to block her. With a shriek that was not human, not animal, she changed. Her form stretched, skin hardening like bark, fingers elongating into clawed branches. "Dryad," someone shouted. "A forest wraith," the creature lashed out. 3 nearby wolves fell, wounds on their arms blackening instantly. "Stop," I commanded, the power thrumming in my voice. The Dryad froze, her twisted face turning toward me with pure hatred. "White Luna," she hissed, the sound like rustling dead leaves. "My king warned me of you. Why are you here?" I demanded. "To end what should have ended ages ago," she spat. "The veil weakens." "Soon he will," her words cut off as Harrison, in a flash of gray fur, lunged in wolf form. But the Dryad was faster. Her arm shot out, wooden claws piercing his chest. Harrison fell, shifting back to human form as he collapsed, convulsing, black poison spreading from the wound. "Father," Nathaniel's cry was raw with anguish as he rushed forward. The Dryad used the distraction to break my command, dissolving into the forest with unnatural speed. I didn't hesitate. Pushing through the crowd, I dropped to my knees beside Harrison. His body was seizing, the darkness crawling toward his heart. "Move back," the command in my voice cleared space. Nathaniel stayed, cradling his father's head, his face ashen. "Save him," he whispered, his eyes pleading. "Please, Evie." I placed my hands on the wound. The poison was malevolent, alive, fighting my healing energy. "It's resisting me." "Luna," Maeve's voice came, calm amid the storm. "The poison is not of this world. Ordinary healing cannot defeat it. Find its source, see beyond the physical." I kept one hand on the wound, the other gripping my pendant. Closing my eyes, I let my awareness sink deeper. In my mind's eye, the poison appeared as pulsing threads of darkness. I followed them back, past Harrison's body, through a connection that stretched into the forest, to the fleeing Dryad and beyond her, to something vast, ancient, and hungry lurking behind a shimmering barrier. The veil, understanding, dawned. I visualized my healing energy not as a balm, but as a blade of pure light. With a focused surge of will, I severed the tether connecting the poison to its source. Harrison gasped, his back arching. The black veins receded rapidly. With the connection broken, my healing energy flowed unimpeded, repairing the physical damage. When I opened my eyes, exhaustion threatened to pull me into darkness. Harrison's eyes were open, clear, fixed on me with an expression I had never seen directed my way, profound respect and a hint of fear. Nathaniel pulled me into a brief, fierce hold of gratitude, his arms trembling around me before releasing me just as quickly, his attention returning to his father. Elder Maeve's voice rang out. "The trials are complete. Evelyn Blake has proven herself through healing, command, and sight. She is without doubt the White Luna." A reverent silence fell, then as one the gathered werewolves knelt, all of them, even Harrison from the ground, inclined his head. Only Nathaniel remained standing beside me, his shoulder touching mine in solidarity. "What happens now?" I asked Maeve, my voice barely a whisper, her ancient eyes were grave. "Now, child, you prepare for war." The word hung in the air, solid and terrible. War. Around us, the kneeling wolves began to rise, their murmurs a tide of shock and grim acceptance. The Dryad's attack had made the theoretical threat terrifyingly real. Nathaniel's hand found my elbow, offering steadying support as the world seemed to tilt. "We need to move," he said quietly, his voice tight. "The clearing is too exposed." Harrison, leaning heavily on his second but already showing remarkable resilience, nodded in agreement. "To the pavilion, now." Elder Maeve led the way, her posture erect and unyielding. The alphas and their seconds fell in behind, creating a protective phalanx around me. The wild wolf ghost, I decided in that moment, padded silently at my heels, a gray shadow of newfound loyalty. The atmosphere in the camp had shifted from the odd curiosity of the morning to a buzzing, urgent tension. Word of the Dryad's attack spread faster than we could walk. Werewolves watched our procession with wide eyes, their expressions now etched with fear as much as reverence. Inside the central pavilion, the mood was starkly functional. Maps were spread across the large table, markers already being placed. The camaraderie of the summit had vanished, replaced by the grim focus of a war council. Harrison, his face still pale but his voice strong, took charge. The Dryad was a scout, its purpose was infiltration and assessment. Its attack confirms the unseen court is not only aware of the Luna's return, but is actively moving against us. Alpha Donovan, his scarred face like grim stone, stabbed a finger at the map. The attack happened here, at our most sacred site. They are bold and they understand our symbols. This was a message. What of the wounded? Asked the Eastern Alpha, a woman named Kira with braided silver hair. Healed, Maeve stated, nodding toward me. The Luna severed the connection to the poison's source. The physical wounds are mended. But the intent is clear. They target our leadership and our spirit. All eyes turned to me. The weight of their expectation was a physical pressure. The messenger I encountered, I began, my voice gaining strength as I spoke. He said the king beyond the veil offers a choice. Stand with him when the veil thins or face annihilation. He said they have been waiting for the White Luna. The convergence, Maeve said, the word dropping into the tent like a cold stone. An alignment when the barrier between worlds grows faint. It occurs with the full moon 3 days hence. 3 days, the number echoed in the silent pavilion. Then that is our timeline, Nathaniel said, standing beside his father. We have 3 days to prepare. For what? Donovan challenged. We do not know their numbers, their capabilities, their point of assault. We know they fear the White Luna, I said, surprising myself. The pendant was warm against my skin, a constant hum of reassurance. The Dryad recognized me. The messenger sought me out specifically. My predecessor's journals in the archives speak of her ability to reinforce the veil itself at weak points. Harrison's eyes sharpened. Can you do this? I believe I must try, I replied. The archives mention thin spots, places where the veil is naturally fragile. If we can strengthen them before the convergence, we may prevent a full-scale breach. Maeve nodded approvingly. A sound strategy, defense before engagement. The Luna's power can fortify the barrier, but it will require her presence at each location. She will be vulnerable during the rituals. Then she is guarded, Nathaniel said, his tone leaving no room for argument. At all times. Agreed, Harrison said, casting a long look at his son. You will lead her protection detail, but we must also consider the broader defense. The summit has gathered over 500 wolves from 12 packs. We are a massive target concentrated in one place. Then we use that, said Alpha Kira. We are not just a target, we are an army, the largest gathering of our kind in generations. We fortify this position, draw their attention here while the Luna secures the perimeter weak points. A strategy began to coalesce. Scouts were dispatched to locate all thin spots within a 50-mile radius. Training grounds were established for coordinated drills between packs, an unprecedented act of cooperation. Weaponsmiths worked through the night, forging silver-tipped spears and arrows, the only metals known to harm otherworldly beings. I was given a tent near the center of camp, close to the Alpha's quarters. Ghost took up residence at its entrance. Nathaniel positioned 2 guards outside, their shifts changing every 4 hours. Exhaustion pulled at me, but sleep was elusive. The events of the day played behind my eyes. The healing, the connection with the wild wolf, the terrifying sight of the Dryad, the feel of Harrison's life trembling in my hands. The magnitude of what was being asked of me was a mountain I could not see the top of. A soft tap came at the tent pole. Evie, it's Sophie. Come in. She entered, carrying a tray of food, hearty stew and dark bread. You need to eat. No one can save the world on an empty stomach. She managed a weak smile. I took the tray, though I had little appetite. Thank you. She sat cross-legged opposite me, her usual vibrancy subdued. It's really happening, isn't it? All the old stories. It seems so. I picked at the bread. Sophie, I'm scared. I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody does, not really, she said with a shrug. My father says leading is mostly about pretending you know until you figure it out, and you're not alone. Nathaniel, the way he looks at you now, it's different. Heat touched my cheeks. It's just the situation. He's the heir. I'm a strategic asset. Sophie gave me a knowing look. It hasn't just been the situation for him for a long time, Evie. Even when he was being an idiot and staying away. She grew serious. He'll keep you safe. We all will. After she left, I tried to rest. The sounds of the preparing camp were a constant backdrop, the clang of metal, hushed orders, the padding of wolf feet. I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew, a presence was at the tent entrance. Nathaniel stood silhouetted against the moonlight. "May I enter?" Of course. He ducked inside, filling the small space. He looked tired but focused. "The scouts have returned. They've located 7 thin spots forming a rough ring around the summit grounds. The closest is about 3 miles east at a place called Whisper Falls." 7, I repeated. "In 3 days. We'll start at first light," he said. "You'll have a guard of 10, including myself. We move fast, fortify, and move on." He hesitated. "The ritual, what will it require of you?" "I'm not entirely sure," I admitted. The journals described it as channeling energy into the weak point, a conscious act of reinforcement. It was draining for her. "Then we minimize risks, in and out." He studied me in the dim light. "You should sleep, so should you." A faint, weary smile touched his lips. "Soon." He turned to go, then paused. "Evie today at the pool. What you did for my father," he shook his head, words failing him for a moment. "Thank you. He is your father and our alpha." It was more than that. His gray eyes were earnest. "You saw what was truly wrong and fixed it. That is what a Luna does." He gave a short nod. "Dawn, then." After he left, I lay back, Ghost steady breathing, a comforting sound at the foot of my bedroll. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But alongside it now was a fragile thread of determination. I had a purpose, a path, and people willing to walk it with me. Just before true sleep took me, the pendant pulsed once, warmly, and I could have sworn I heard my grandmother's voice, faint as a sigh. "You are ready, child." Dawn arrived as a pale, gray smear in the east, devoid of the previous day's brilliant colors. It suited the mood. I dressed in sturdy, travel-worn clothes and boots, braiding my hair back tightly. When I emerged, Nathaniel and 9 other wolves were waiting, all in human form but carrying the focused readiness of predators. Among them was Marcus, a hulking warrior from our pack with a quiet demeanor, and Alara, a fierce huntress from the Western Territories with eyes that missed nothing. Ghost materialized from the shadows to join us. "Stay close, move quietly, and conserve your energy for the ritual," Nathaniel instructed, his voice low. "Marcus will take point, Alara rear guard, the rest defensive positions around the Luna at all times." We moved into the forest, a silent, efficient unit. The woods were different now, no longer just a sanctuary. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig was a potential threat. My newly enhanced senses were both a blessing and a curse, flooding me with information. I could smell the damp earth, the distant musk of deer, the sharp scent of pine, and beneath it all, a faint metallic tang that set my teeth on edge, the residual wrongness of the Dryad's passage. After an hour of steady hiking, the sound of water reached us, a soft, constant sighing that gave Whisper Falls its name. We emerged into a small clearing where a slender ribbon of water cascaded down a mossy rock face into a clear pool below. The air here was charged, vibrating with a subtle, dissonant hum that made the hair on my arms stand up. This was the place. The thin spot was not something visible to normal sight, but I could feel it, a patch of air near the base of the falls that seemed to waver like heat haze, bleeding cold, and that same metallic scent. "Form a perimeter," Nathaniel ordered. The guards fanned out, weapons drawn, facing the tree line. Ghost positioned himself between me and the forest, ears pricked, a low growl in his throat. Nathaniel stood beside me. "What do you need?" I closed my eyes, reaching for the comm center I had accessed during the trials. The energy of the white Luna was there, a pool of silvery light within me. I approached the shimmering patch of air, raising my hands. Instinct guided me. I didn't need incantations or complex gestures, I needed intention. I focused on the concept of the veil, a wall, a shield, a boundary. I envisioned it strong, whole, and impenetrable. Then I pulled the silvery energy from my core and pushed it outward through my hands, directing it into the weak spot. It was like pouring water into a crack. The energy flowed, and as it did, I could see the fabric of the barrier in my mind's eye, a magnificent, worn tapestry. The thin spot was a frayed, threadbare section. My energy was new thread, weaving itself into the old pattern, reinforcing, strengthening. The process was intensely draining. Sweat beaded on my brow as I fed more and more of myself into the repair. The dissonant hum began to change, softening, harmonizing. The wavering in the air steadied. After what felt like an eternity, the flow of energy slowed, then stopped. The patch was sealed. The air felt clean, neutral. The job was done. I swayed, my legs buckling. Nathaniel's arm was around me in an instant, holding me upright. "Easy," he murmured. "It's done, you did it." I leaned against him, too weary to protest, drawing strength from his solid presence. "It's stable." "For now, good, rest a moment. We have 6 more to go." We allowed me a few minutes to drink some water and eat a piece of journey bread. The guards remained vigilant, but the clearing was quiet, too quiet. The normal forest sounds had stilled. Ilara, from her position near the tree line, stiffened. Nathaniel, movement northwest, silent, not animal. Every wolf went on higher alert. Nathaniel gently moved me behind him, his body a shield. How many? Unsure, they're blending with the shadows. Then they emerged, not dryads. These were lower to the ground, creatures of condensed darkness and jagged, protruding bone. They moved on all fours, but their limbs were jointed wrong, and their eyes were pinpricks of cold green light. Shadowhounds, there were 5 of them. They flowed from the trees without a sound, surrounding the clearing. Protect the Luna, Nathaniel barked, shifting in a blur of motion. His wolf form was a powerful, sleek gray. Around him, the other guards shifted as well, a sudden explosion of fur and muscle. The shadowhounds attacked. They were fast, unnaturally so. One lunged at Marcus, who met it midair, his powerful jaws clamping on a limb of darkness. The creature screeched, a sound that grated on the mind and dissolved into smoke where his teeth held silver. Ghost, with a bravery that belied his wild nature, launched himself at another, harrying its flank. But a third hound slipped past the defensive line, aiming directly for me. I was still drained, human, vulnerable. I raised my hands, not knowing what I could do. Nathaniel intercepted it, a furious gray missile. He slammed into the creature, and they tumbled in a whirl of snarls and shadow. The hound's bony claws raked his shoulder, leaving lines of smoking, dark energy instead of blood. Nathaniel twisted, his jaws finding its neck. With a sickening crunch and a dissipating wail, the hound vanished. The fight was brutal but short. The wolves, working with a coordination born of instant camaraderie, dispatched the remaining hounds, but the cost was clear. 2 guards bore smoking wounds similar to Nathaniel's. Marcus had a deep gash on his foreleg that seemed resistant to his natural healing. I pushed my fatigue aside. Stumbling forward, I placed my hands on Marcus's leg. The wound was infused with the same malevolent energy as Harrison's poison, though less concentrated. Drawing on a reserve I didn't know I had, I pushed healing light into it, purging the darkness. The flesh knitted cleanly. I moved to the next wounded guard, then the next. By the time I finished, I was trembling with renewed exhaustion. Finally, I turned to Nathaniel. He had shifted back to human form, his shirt torn, the wounds on his shoulder angry and dark. "Let me," I said, my voice thin. "Save your strength," he protested. "Don't be stubborn." I placed my hand over the wounds. The dark energy resisted, but it was weaker. I focused, channeling the healing light, feeling it scour the shadows from his flesh. The wounds closed, leaving only pink, new scars. His breath hitched as my power worked. His eyes were locked on my face, a storm of emotions in their gray depths, gratitude, concern, and something warmer, deeper. When I finished, his hand came up to cover mine where it still rested on his now-healed shoulder. His skin was warm, his grip gentle. "Thank you," he said softly. The moment was shattered by Ilara's report. They were scouts like the Dryad, testing our defenses, probing our strength. "And they found her," she looked at me grimly. "Then we cannot delay," Nathaniel said, his professional mask snapping back into place though he released my hand slowly. "They know we're fortifying the weak points. They'll try to stop us at the next one. We move now." And we move faster. As we regrouped and set off toward the next location, the reality of our situation crystallized. The unseen court was not waiting passively. They were watching, probing, attacking. The war had already begun, and we were on the front lines. My fatigue was profound, but a new, steely resolve hardened within me. They had hurt my protectors. They had threatened everything I was only beginning to understand was worth fighting for. I touched the pendant, now cool against my skin. 3 days, I thought, 6 more spots. We would not fail. The second thin spot was located in a high meadow, a place where a ring of ancient, lichen-crusted stones stood silent sentinel under the vast sky. The feeling of wrongness here was different, not a fraying, but a persistent, grating pressure, as if the barrier itself was being pushed from the other side. We arrived under a sky-threatening rain. The journey had been tense, every shadow scrutinized, but we encountered no further attacks. The respite did little to ease the tension. It felt like the calm before a storm. "The stones mark a natural convergence of ley lines," Nathaniel said, consulting a rough map provided by the scouts. "It magnifies the weakness." The guard took up their positions. The open meadow offered little cover, making us feel exposed. Ghost paced restlessly at my side, his nose twitching at the sourceless metallic scent. I approached the stone circle. The pressure increased, a physical resistance against my senses. Placing my hands on the central, largest stone, I closed my eyes and reached inward. This time the process was more difficult. The weak spot was not just thin, it was actively stressed. Pouring my energy into it felt like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The pressure from the other side fought back, a cold, alien will pushing against mine. I gritted my teeth, pouring more power forth. the silvery light within me flared. I could feel the ancient stones around me humming, resonating with my energy, amplifying it. I was not just Evelyn, I was connected to this place, to the deep bones of the earth. Slowly, agonizingly, the pressure began to recede, the hole in the bucket sealed. The grating dissonance smoothed into a stable, low hum. I slumped forward, my forehead resting against the cool rock, utterly spent. This one had taken twice the energy of Whisper Falls. Strong hands gripped my shoulders, pulling me gently upright. Nathaniel. "You're pushing too hard," he said, his voice thick with concern. He handed me a water skin. "We have 5 more. You cannot expend yourself completely on the second." It was resisting me, I breathed, taking a long drink. There's something pushing back from the other side. His expression darkened. They know what we're doing, they're trying to counter it. He looked around the exposed meadow. This location is too vulnerable. We finish the ritual and move, now. As we prepared to leave, Alara, who had climbed one of the perimeter stones for a better vantage, gave a sharp whistle. Riders, approaching from the north, fast. We turned. Coming across the meadow at a gallop were a dozen werewolves in human form, mounted on sturdy forest horses. At their head rode Alpha Donovan, his scarred face set in a grim frown. They reined in before us, dust swirling. "Luna," Donovan said, dipping his head in a curt acknowledgement. "Nathaniel, we intercepted a group of those shadow creatures heading this direction. Eliminated them, but it seems you've already had trouble." "Scouts," Nathaniel confirmed. "We handled it. What news from the council?" "Harrison and the others are mobilizing the main force," Donovan said, his eyes scanning the stone circle, then resting on my visibly fatigued state. "Preparations are underway at the summit grounds, but there is disagreement." "About what?" I asked, finding my voice. His gaze settled on me, assessing. "About you, Luna. Some believe your place is at the center of the defense, protected, a symbol to rally around. Others believe you should be moving between the weak points as you are now. It is a debate of strategy and of risk. The weak points must be sealed," I stated, my weariness making me blunt. "A symbol won't stop the veil from tearing." A faint, approving glint showed in Donovan's hard eyes. "My thoughts precisely, which is why I've brought reinforcements." He gestured to his riders. 10 of my best, they will supplement your guard. We cannot lose you to an ambush." Nathaniel hesitated, clearly weighing the politics of accepting another Alpha's warriors into his command. "We appreciate the strength, but command remains unified." "Of course," Donovan said, though his tone implied the matter was not fully conceded. "My Lieutenant Kale will answer to you." He nodded to a stern-faced woman with eyes the color of flint. "For now, we will ride with you to the next location and assess the threat." The addition of Donovan's fighters changed the dynamic of our group. They were disciplined, silent, and carried an air of grim efficiency. As we set out for the third site, a sinkhole deep in a pine forest, the combined force moved like a small army. During the march, Nathaniel fell into step beside me. "Be cautious around Donovan," he murmured, his voice low. "He respects strength above all. He supports you now because you are acting, not just being, but his loyalty is to his own pack and his own vision of survival first. You don't trust him. I trust him to be exactly what he is, a pragmatist. That makes him a powerful ally, but his methods can be severe." The third site was the most unsettling yet. The sinkhole was a jagged maw in the earth, exhaling a breath of frigid air that smelled of wet stone and ozone. The thin spot here felt like an open wound, raw and bleeding energy. From its depths, faint, echoing whispers seemed to drift, voices speaking in no language I knew, filled with longing and malice. The guard formed a wide perimeter. Donovan's warriors integrated seamlessly, their crossbows loaded with silver bolts. The ritual here was a battle. The wound in the veil did not want to close. The whispers coalesced into a psychic assault, pressing against my mind with images of despair, of failure, of my pack falling beneath shadowy claws. I felt a cold tendril of doubt snake into my thoughts. "You are not enough. You will fail them all." I gasped, my concentration faltering. The energy I was channeling sputtered. "Evelyn." Nathaniel's voice, sharp with worry, cut through the mental fog from his position at the rim of the sinkhole. I clutched my pendant. Even the smallest light, I focused on physical sensations, the cool metal in my palm, the solid earth beneath my knees, the sound of Nathaniel's voice. I pushed back against the whispers, not with anger but with a firm, clear image of the veil whole and strong. I poured my energy, my will, my very identity as the white Luna into the wound. With a soundless, psychic snap, the wound sealed, the whispers cut off abruptly. The frigid air warmed a degree. I slumped, trembling, every muscle protesting. This time when Nathaniel helped me up, his concern was plain. "We must stop for today. You're at your limit." 3 sealed, I argued weakly. 4 remain. We don't have time. "If you collapse or make a mistake from exhaustion, we lose everything," he countered firmly. He looked to Donovan. We return to camp, she rests, we continue at first light tomorrow. Donovan studied me, then gave a single, curt nod. The Luna's endurance is impressive, but the air is correct. A dead hero is no use to anyone. We return. The creatures know our pattern now. The night will be dangerous. The journey back to the summit grounds was a tense, silent trek. The forest felt like it held its breath. We were all aware that our movements were being tracked. We arrived as twilight deepened, the camp now a fortress alive with purposeful activity. Watchtowers had been erected, trenches dug, and fires burned brightly. News of our successful sealing of 3 weak points and the encounters with the enemy spread quickly, bolstering morale, but as I retreated to my tent, the true cost was evident. I was hollowed out, a vessel nearly drained. Sophie brought food and sat with me, her chatter a comforting, normal sound, but even she grew quiet, seeing the deep fatigue in my eyes. Later, as I tried to force myself to eat, Nathaniel appeared at the entrance. He had a bundle of herbs that steamed with a calming, restorative scent. From Elder Maeve, it will aid your recovery. Thank you. I took the cup, our fingers brushing. Today the whispers, they tried to break my will. His expression was fierce, but they failed. You are stronger than you know, Evie, stronger than any of us knew. He lingered, as if wanting to say more, but duty called. Rest, tomorrow will be longer. After he left, I drank the bitter tea and lay down. Ghost settled at my side with a sigh. The camp sounds were a lullaby of preparation. As I drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, one clear thought remained: 3 down, 4 to go. The race continued and the enemy was watching. The herbal draft worked wonders. I woke with the dawn feeling restored, the profound exhaustion replaced by a manageable fatigue and a renewed sense of purpose. The pendant was cool and quiet against my skin. Before we set out to continue sealing the weak points, I sought out Elder Maeve. She was in a smaller tent, studying fragile scrolls from the archive. Elder, I greeted her. The journals of my predecessor, you said she sacrificed herself to seal the veil, but when I was at the moon altar, I felt something different. Maeve looked up, her ancient eyes sharp. The altar showed you truth. What did you see? I saw her channeling her power into the barrier, not her life force, but her identity as the White Luna. She gave up what she was to become a permanent part of the seal. That's why it has lasted centuries and why it's failing now. Her essence has finally dissipated. Maeve nodded slowly, a more nuanced understanding than the simplified legend. Yes, she performed the great binding. It required not death but a total surrender of her unique power, a relinquishment. Could it be done again? I asked, the question heavy in the air. Could I bind the veil anew, with your power alone, perhaps? It would create another temporary seal, lasting perhaps another few centuries, but it would cost you your abilities, your connection to the title. You would be, for all intents and purposes, human. The thought was not frightening, but saddening. This power so new felt like a part of me I had always been missing. Is there another way, a permanent way? Maeve was silent for a long moment, her gnarled fingers tracing the symbols on a scroll. The legends speak of a convergence of another kind. Not just of the veil, but of wills. The White Luna is a conduit. Her power alone is a stream, but the combined strength of all werewolf packs, that is a river. A river could power a seal that might last indefinitely. Hope, fragile and fierce, sparked in my chest. You mean if the alphas, all of them, channeled their pack's strength through me during the convergence, you could perform a great binding of such magnitude that the veil would be reinforced for millennia, perhaps forever. And you might retain a kernel of your own power as the keystone of that new structure. She fixed me with her piercing gaze, but it is a tremendous risk. It requires perfect unity among the alphas, a thing rarely seen. It requires you to withstand a torrent of energy that could shatter you, and it must be performed at the precise moment of the convergence at the primary weak point, the one here, beneath the summit grounds themselves. The plan formed in my mind with terrifying clarity. It was audacious, dangerous, and the only path that led to a true victory, not just a delayed defeat. I found Nathaniel and Harrison at the war table, deep in discussion with Donovan and Alpha Kira. I laid out Maeve's theory and the proposed plan. The reaction was stark. Impossible, Harrison stated flatly. The coordination alone, the trust required. It is the only strategy that offers a final solution, I countered, my voice calm. Otherwise, we are just fighting a holding action for the next White Luna in 200 years. She's right, Donovan said, to my surprise. I did not bring my warriors here to fight a battle my grandchildren will have to fight again. We end it. The risk to the Luna, Nathaniel began, his face tight with worry, is mine to take, I finished gently, meeting his eyes. I am the conduit. This is what I am for. The debate raged for an hour, but as the logic settled and the grim alternative became clear, resistance crumbled. The plan was adopted, but with a critical modification. The original mission to seal the remaining 4 peripheral weak points would continue. It would prevent flanking attacks and channel the enemy's forces toward the main event, the convergence at the summit. Then we have our roles, Harrison said, finally. Nathaniel, you continue to protect the Luna as she seals the perimeter. Donovan, your forces will spearhead the defense of the main camp, coordinating with the other alphas. I will prepare the ritual site and ensure the unity of the council. It was a dizzying shift. My task was no longer just defensive, it was a critical part of a grand, dangerous strategy. Our group, now bolstered by Donovan's warriors, set out with renewed urgency. The 4th thin spot was in a murky, stagnant fen. The air was thick with insects and the smell of decay. The weak spot here felt sickly, infected. Sealing it was like cleansing a fever, requiring focused, purifying energy. We were not attacked, but the sense of being watched was oppressive. The 5th site was a windswept cliff edge. Here, the veil was frayed by elemental forces, howling with a psychic wind. Holding my ground and focusing my energy was a physical and mental struggle against the gale. As I finished, my knees buckling, Cale, Donovan's lieutenant, was the one to steady me with a strong, impersonal grip. 2 more Luna, she said, her voice devoid of warmth but not respect. We made camp that night in a defensible cave, not daring a return to the summit. Tension was high. We were deep in territory that felt increasingly hostile. During my watch, Nathaniel joined me at the cave entrance where I sat with Ghost. The moon was a sliver in a sky dense with stars. You're quiet, he observed, sitting beside me, a respectful space between us. Thinking about the binding, I admitted. About letting all that power flow through me. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I fail? You won't. You can't know that. I do, he said with simple conviction. Because you are not doing it for power or glory or duty alone. You are doing it for them. He gestured back toward the cave where the others slept. For Sophie, who never gave up on you. For Marcus, whose leg you healed. For every pup in every pack who deserves a future. That kind of motive, it forges a strength that cannot break. His words wrapped around me like a cloak against the cold. You always knew what to say to me, I murmured, even when you weren't saying anything at all. In the dim light, I saw his throat work. It was the greatest mistake of my life, staying away. I told myself it was to protect you from the politics, from the ridicule my attention might bring, but it was cowardice. I was protecting my own position, not you. The raw honesty was a gift. We can't change the past, Nate, only what we do now. He nodded, his profile sharp against the night. Now I stand with you to the end, whatever it brings. He turned his head and our eyes met in the darkness. The unspoken things between us hung in the air, potent and real, but the moment was for acknowledgement, not action. The time for more would come later if we survived. He reached out, not to touch me, but to offer his hand, palm up, in a gesture of solidarity. I placed my hand in his fingers closed around mine, a firm, warm, grounding pressure. We sat like that in silence, watching the stars, 2 points of resolve in the vast, threatening night. 2 weak points remained. Tomorrow we would face them. And then, the convergence. The 6th thin spot lay in the deepest part of an old-growth forest, a place known as the Heartwood. The trees here were giants, their trunks wider than houses, and the canopy was so thick it felt like perpetual twilight. The air was still and heavy, thick with the smell of loam and age. The weak spot here was different from the others. It didn't feel torn or stressed, it felt ancient, a weariness in the fabric of reality itself. As I approached the designated spot, a clearing around the base of the largest tree, the sense of being watched intensified from a feeling to a certainty. They're here, Alara whispered, her bow already nocked. All around us. Shadows detached themselves from the deeper shadows beneath the trees. Not just shadowhounds this time. Taller, bipedal figures moved with a sinuous grace, creatures with elongated limbs, skin like polished obsidian, and faces devoid of features save for glowing, rune-like sigils. The king's blades, Nathaniel shifted instantly, a silent signal. Our entire guard followed suit, a ring of wolves facing outward. Ghost bared his teeth, a snarl rumbling in his chest. Donovan's warriors formed a second, inner ring around me, crossbows leveled. The featureless creatures attacked without sound. They were fast and strong, their obsidian limbs striking like whips, cutting through fur and flesh. A wolf from the western pack went down with a choked yelp. Silver bolts thudded into dark bodies, causing them to shriek and dissolve into viscous smoke, but there were many of them. Luna, you must begin the ritual, Cale barked, firing another bolt. We will hold them. Nathaniel, a furious gray cyclone, fought his way to my side in wolf form, his message clear. Now. I turned my back on the battle, forcing myself to focus on the ancient tree and the weary thin spot at its roots. Closing my eyes, I reached for my power. The sounds of combat, snarls, shrieks, the thud of bodies were a terrifying distraction. I felt a surge of protective fury from Nathaniel, a spike of pain from Marcus, the cold focus of Cale. I channeled it all, not the fear but the determination behind it, the will to protect. I poured that will along with my silvery energy into the weary spot. It was like offering water to parched earth. The ancient weakness drank deeply, greedily. The sealing was slower here, a gentle strengthening rather than a forceful repair. As the ritual reached its climax, a particularly large blade creature broke through the line, aiming a spear-like limb at my back. Nathaniel lunged, intercepting it, but the creature twisted, and the obsidian point scored a deep line across his flank. He didn't falter, his jaws closing on its neck until it shattered. The moment he was wounded, a jolt went through our connection. It wasn't physical pain, but a surge of shared resolve, a fierce protectiveness that flowed from him to me and back. My energy flared brighter, and with a final push, the heartwood thin spot sealed with a profound, grounding thrum that vibrated through the giant trees. The remaining blade creatures hesitated, disoriented by the sudden stabilization of energy. It was the opening the pack needed. With coordinated fury, they were dispatched. The clearing fell silent, save for heavy panting. I turned, immediately seeking Nathaniel. He had shifted back, a hand pressed to the bleeding gash on his side. The wound was dark like the others, but he waved me off. Seal it later, the bog is last. We must move before they regroup. He was right, we had to keep momentum. After hastily treating the most serious wounds with basic field dressings, we pressed on toward the final perimeter weak point, the Crimson Bog. The bog was a place of ill repute, a vast expanse of stagnant, rust-colored water and treacherous, sucking mud under a perpetually misty sky. The thin spot here was the most volatile yet, a pulsing, sickly greenish rupture hovering over a patch of relatively solid ground. It bled cold malice, and the whispers were back, louder, promising despair. We were all exhausted, wounded, and on edge. The mist limited visibility to a few dozen feet. "This is a perfect place for an ambush," Marcus grumbled, testing the ground with a wary foot. "Then we make it quick," Nathaniel said. "Luna, the moment it's sealed, we run for the summit, don't wait for anything." I nodded, my mouth dry. The energy from the heartwood had taken a different toll, leaving me feeling heavy, oversaturated. I approached the pulsating rupture. The whispers became a clamor in my head. Alone, failure, burden. I saw flashes of the summit in flames, of wolves falling, of Nathaniel lying still. I pushed them aside, focusing on the silvery light within, but it felt muddy, sluggish. I began the ritual. Energy flowed, but it was a struggle. The rupture fought back, pushing a wave of psychic nausea over me. I stumbled to one knee. "Evie," Nathaniel's voice was sharp with fear. I couldn't answer. The green energy from the rupture was seeping into my own, corrupting it. I felt myself slipping, the seal starting to unravel. If this point wasn't sealed, the enemy would have a direct backdoor into the territory during the convergence. No, I thought of my grandmother, of Sophie's smile, of Nathaniel's hand in mine under the stars. Of the hope in the pack's eyes. I clutched the pendant so hard the metal bit into my palm. With a raw, wordless cry, I didn't just push my energy out, I pulled. I pulled on the connection I felt to the land, to the packs, to the wolves fighting beside me. I drew on their strength, not stealing it, but weaving it with my own. The silvery light blazed, burning away the green corruption. I fed the pure, combined will into the rupture. It sealed with a sound like a thunderclap contained in glass. The shockwave blew back the mist for 100 yards, the psychic pressure vanished. I fell forward, utterly spent, consciousness flickering. Nathaniel was there in an instant, lifting me into his arms as if I weighed nothing. "It's done, all perimeter points are sealed, to the summit, now." The run back was a blur of motion and fatigue. I was vaguely aware of being carried, of the landscape rushing by, of the grim, determined faces of my guard. Ghost ran alongside, ever present. We burst into the summit grounds as the sun began to set on the second day. The camp was a hive of frantic, final preparations. Alphas shouted orders, warriors drilled formations, and non-combatants were being moved to a protected cave system. Nathaniel didn't stop until we reached the healer's tent. Only after the healer had confirmed I was merely exhausted, not injured, did he allow himself to be treated for the wound on his flank. As the healer cleaned the dark energy from it, I sat nearby, sipping a restorative broth Sophie brought. Our eyes met across the tent. He was pale, tired, but his gaze was steady. We had done it. The perimeter was secure. All that remained was the heart of the storm, the convergence and the great binding. Tomorrow was the full moon. The summit grounds on the eve of the convergence were a study in controlled chaos. The festive atmosphere of the gathering was a distant memory, replaced by the grim efficiency of a military encampment on the brink of battle. Watchfires burned brighter, sentries were doubled, and the air crackled with a tension that had nothing to do with the coming storm. I was given a few hours of enforced rest in a more secure tent near the command center. Sleep was fragmented, haunted by visions of the pulsating green rupture and the featureless faces of the blade creatures. Each time I startled awake, the solid, silent presence of Ghost at the foot of my bedroll grounded me. In the late afternoon, Elder Maeve summoned me. She led me to a natural amphitheater at the very center of the summit grounds, the site of the primary weak point and the planned location for the great binding. It was a bowl of earth surrounded by tall standing stones, older than any pack's memory. In its center was a flat, altar-like stone etched with the same crescent moon symbol. "This is the convergence point," Maeve said, her voice low. "The heart of the veil's fragility here. At the height of the full moon, the barrier will be tissue-thin. The king will focus his forces here, trying to tear it open. And we will be waiting," I said, the plan now feeling terrifyingly immediate. "The alphas must form a circle around you here," she instructed, pointing to specific markers in the stone. "They must be in human form to channel the pack bonds consciously. You will stand at the altar. When the moment comes, you must open yourself as a conduit. Their combined strength will flow into you, and you must shape it, focus it, and direct it into the weak point to perform the binding." "What if their unity falters?" I asked, voicing the fear that had nagged at me since the plan was formed. "Then the energy will become chaotic. It could backlash, injuring them, or worse, shatter you." Her ancient eyes held mine. "That is why you must lead them, Luna, not with command but with trust. They must believe in the unity as much as you do." As we walked back through the camp, I saw the alphas gathering for their final council. Harrison, Donovan, Kira, and the others. Their faces were set, their disagreements set aside for the moment in the face of the common enemy. I saw Nathaniel with them, not as an heir listening but as a contributor. His perspective from the front lines was invaluable. Sophie found me as dusk fell. She was outfitted in light leather armor, a quiver of silver-tipped arrows on her back. "I'm assigned to the rear guard, protecting the healers and the young," she said, trying to sound brave but unable to hide the fear in her eyes. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back." I pulled her into a tight embrace. "I promise I will do everything I can. You be careful too, no heroics." She pulled back, tears glittering. "You're the hero Evie, always have been." As night deepened, I made a quiet circuit of the camp. I passed warriors sharpening weapons, healers preparing bandages and poultices, elders comforting crying pups. I saw Marcus, his leg fully healed, laughing with some of Donovan's fighters, a camaraderie forged in the fen and the heartwood. I saw Alara methodically checking every arrow in her quiver. Their faces, their determination, solidified my resolve. This was worth any risk. I found Nathaniel at the eastern rampart, looking out over the darkening forest. He turned as I approached. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much to think about." We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the first stars appear. "My father," Nathaniel began quietly, "apologized to me today for doubting you, for his handling of you all these years. He sees it now, what you are." "He was protecting the pack's strength as he saw it," I said, feeling a surprising lack of bitterness. "He was wrong. You are the pack's strength." Nathaniel turned to face me fully. "Evelyn, tomorrow during the binding I will be with the alphas, channeling the Blake pack's strength to you. I won't be at your side." A pang of fear, sharp and personal, cut through me. I had grown accustomed to his protective presence. "I know. But I need you to know," he continued, his voice intense, "that no matter where I am standing, my will, my strength, my focus, it is all for you, to protect you, to ensure you come through this." The unspoken things between us surged to the surface, impossible to ignore in the face of what tomorrow might bring. The careful distance, the years of silence fell away like leaves in the wind. "Nate," the words stuck in my throat, too big, too fraught. He took a step closer, closing the space between us. He didn't reach for me, but his entire being was focused on me. "You don't have to say it, I see it, I've always seen it. And after tomorrow, if we have an after, I don't want to waste another moment." The promise in his words was a warmth that spread through my chest, battling the cold fear. It was a reason to fight, to survive, that was entirely our own. "After tomorrow," I echoed, my voice firm with newfound certainty. "We will." He offered his hand just as he had the night before. I took it. This time he didn't let go. We stood there hand in hand on the eve of battle, drawing strength from the simple, profound connection. No kiss, no embrace, just the solid pressure of his palm against mine, a silent vow passing between us. A horn sounded once, twice, the signal for all non-essential personnel to take shelter. The final phase was beginning. He released my hand slowly, reluctantly. "It's time. May the moon guide you, Luna. And you, Nathaniel." We parted, he to join the alphas, I to take my place at the altar stone. As I walked toward the amphitheater, the pendant felt light against my skin, almost eager. The camp fell into a hushed, anticipatory silence. The last of the light faded, and the moon, not yet full but bloated and ominous, began its rise. The final wait had begun. The moon climbed, a luminous, watchful eye bleaching the color from the world. In the stone amphitheater, the air grew thick and heavy, charged with a static that raised the hair on my arms. The weak point beneath the altar stone was no longer a subtle wrongness. It was a throbbing, visible distortion, like heat haze over a fire, but cold, so cold it drew the warmth from the surrounding stones. The 12 alphas took their positions in a wide circle around me, each standing on one of the ancient markers. Harrison, Donovan, Kira, and the others, their faces were masks of concentration in the moonlight. Nathaniel stood at the marker for the Blake pack, his gaze finding mine across the distance, steady and sure. He gave a single, slow nod. Beyond the circle of alphas, ranks of werewolves stood in defensive rings, the combined might of the packs, a wall of fur, fang, and silver. Ghost was somewhere among them, a silent gray promise. Elder Maeve stood just outside the ritual circle, her eyes closed, her lips moving in silent prayer or incantation. We waited. The tension was a living thing. The forest beyond the summit grounds was preternaturally silent. No owls called. No insects chirped. It was as if the world itself held its breath. Then, as the moon reached its zenith, the distortion above the altar rippled. A soundless tear appeared in the air, vertical and jagged, leaking a phosphorescent green light that cast sickly shadows. Through the tear I could see shifting, impossible landscapes, forests of crystalline trees, skies of swirling violet, and masses of dark, moving shapes. The veil was parting. From the tear, figures began to pour. Shadowhounds first, flowing like liquid night. Then the obsidian blade creatures, their featureless faces and glowing sigils a nightmare-given form. Behind them came taller, more regal figures draped in robes of captured starlight and gloom, the nobles of the unseen court. And at the rear, stepping through the rip in reality as if it were a mere doorway, came the king. He was tall, impossibly so, and thin in a way that spoke of ageless hunger rather than frailty. His form seemed woven from the same shadows as his minions, but dotted with points of cold light like a negative image of the night sky. A crown of twisted, thorn-like darkness sat upon his head. Where his face should have been was a smooth, dark expanse, save for 2 eyes that were pools of absolute void, drinking in the moonlight. His presence was a pressure on my mind, a weight of ancient malice and boundless ambition. He surveyed our assembled forces, the circle of alphas, and finally his void-like eyes settled on me. The little light has returned, his voice echoed, not in the air but directly in our minds, cold and dripping with contempt, to sputter and die once more. The battle did not begin with a roar but with a silent, simultaneous surge. At a psychic command from the king, his forces attacked. The werewolf ranks met them with a thunderous clash that shattered the stillness. Snarls, shrieks, the clash of silver on obsidian, the thwump of crossbows, the amphitheater became a maelstrom of violence. But the circle of alphas held firm, their eyes locked on me. There was a barrier against the chaos. The ritual space was an island of eerie calm in the storm. Now Luna, Maeve's voice cut through the mental static. I raised my hands toward the tear in the veil. I closed my eyes, not to block out the battle, but to focus inward. I found the silvery core of my power and opened myself, not as a vessel to be filled, but as a channel to be used. Alphas of the packs, I called out, my voice ringing with an authority that was not my own. Link your strength to mine. For our future, for our home, I felt them respond. 12 threads of power, each unique. Harrison's was disciplined and sharp, Donovan's fierce and unyielding, Kira's fluid and adaptive. Nathaniel's, his was a torrent of protective fury, grounded and unwavering. They flowed into me, a raging river of raw, untamed energy. It was agony, it was ecstasy. My body felt like it would fly apart, every cell screaming at the influx of power. The silvery light within me became a supernova, straining to contain it all. I heard myself cry out, but the sound was lost in the roar of energy. Through slitted eyes, I saw the king take a step forward, raising a hand. A bolt of condensed shadow, colder than the void between stars, shot toward me, but it never reached me. Nathaniel, still channeling, didn't move from his marker, but a wolf from the Blake pack line, Marcus, leaped in front of the bolt. It struck him full in the chest. He fell without a sound, his body crumbling to ash before it hit the ground. No. The grief was a sharp, personal wound, but it fused with the energy within me, tempering it, giving it purpose. This was the cost, this was why we fought. I gathered the monumental power, focusing it through the lens of the White Luna's purpose, not to destroy but to protect, not to dominate but to preserve. I shaped the raging river into a spear of pure, constructive will. With a scream that tore from my very soul, I thrust my hands forward and unleashed the combined power of the werewolf nation at the tear in the veil. A column of blinding, silver-white light erupted from me, striking the center of the distortion. It wasn't an attack, it was a graft, a weaving. My consciousness expanded along with the light, becoming one with the act of creation. I could see the threads of the veil, ancient and frayed. I took the energy from the packs and began to knit, to mend, to reinforce. I wove their strength, their history, their hopes for the future directly into the fabric of the barrier. The king howled in rage, a psychic blast that staggered several wolves. He threw more bolts of shadow, but they sputtered and died in the radiant field now surrounding the ritual circle. His forces redoubled their attacks, sensing their window closing, but the packs fought with the desperate strength of those defending their very existence. They held the line. The mending was vast, complex work. I felt the other 6 weak points I had sealed, recognizing my own energy in them, using them as anchors for this great, central repair. The tear began to shrink, the green light dimming, the visions of the other realm fading. You think this ends it? The king's voice roared in my mind. I am eternal, I will wait, I will return. No, I thought, pouring the last dregs of the combined energy, the last ounce of my will into the seal. You will not. With a final, silent flash that left afterimages on every retina, the tear sealed. The veil was whole, not just patched but renewed, thrumming with a strength it hadn't known for millennia. The connection to the alphas snapped, the river of power vanished. I collapsed to my knees at the altar, utterly hollow, my own silvery light within me dimmed to a faint, fragile ember. I had retained a spark, as Maeve said I might, but the vast power was gone, woven into the world itself. On the other side of the now solid barrier, the king's form blurred, his court dissolving into mist. His void-like eyes held mine for one last, hate-filled moment before he and all his forces were gone, severed from our world. The sudden silence was deafening. The battle was over. The silence following the sealing of the veil was profound, broken only by the heavy panting of exhausted wolves and the soft moans of the wounded. The unnatural green light was gone, replaced by the pure, cold radiance of the full moon, which now seemed merely a moon again, not an omen. I remained on my knees, trembling uncontrollably, the stone of the altar cold beneath my palms. The world felt muted, distant, as if I were viewing it through a thick pane of glass. The tremendous influx and outflow of power had left me feeling insubstantial, a ghost in my own skin. The circle of alphas was stirring. I saw Harrison sway on his feet before catching himself, Donovan leaning heavily on his sheathed sword, Kira wiping blood from a cut on her brow. Nathaniel was already moving, pushing past the other alphas, his ritual marker forgotten. He reached my side in moments, dropping to one knee beside me. Evelyn, his voice was hoarse, his face etched with concern that cut through my daze. His hands came up, hovering as if afraid to touch me. Are you hurt? I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. I shook my head slightly, the motion making the world spin. His hands settled then, one on my shoulder, the other gently tilting my chin up so he could see my eyes. The contact was grounding, a tether to reality. You did it, he said, the words filled with awe and relief. It's sealed, it's over. Around us, the reality of the aftermath was settling in. The cost was visible. Warriors were tending to the wounded, gathering the fallen. The body of Marcus was a pile of ash, a stark, painful void in the Blake pack line. Grief, sharp and communal, began to pierce the numb triumph. Elder Maeve approached, moving slowly but with undeniable purpose. She placed a gnarled hand on my head. The great binding is complete. The veil is restored, stronger than it has been since the first days. You have given our people a true future, child. Her words should have brought elation. Instead, I felt a deep, weary sadness. The power that had been my identity for such a short, intense time was largely gone, woven into the barrier. I felt ordinary, and yet not. The ember remained, a quiet warmth in my core, and a new, profound connection to the land and the packs hummed in my bones. Harrison joined us, his expression unreadable. He looked from me to his son, then bowed his head, not as an alpha to a superior, but as one warrior to another who had borne a great burden. The packs owe you a debt that can never be repaid, Luna. The title didn't feel like a prophecy anymore. It felt like a responsibility I had earned. The debt is shared, Alpha. The strength was yours. The sacrifice was everyone's. My eyes found the ashes that were Marcus. Harrison followed my gaze, his jaw tightening. His sacrifice will be remembered. As will all of them, this victory has a price, but it is a permanent one. He looked out over the clearing, at the wolves beginning the grim tasks of recovery. We must see to our people. As the leadership dispersed to organize triage and secure the perimeter, Nathaniel helped me to my feet. My legs were unsteady, but he was a solid support. You need to rest, he insisted. There are wounded, I protested weakly. And there are healers, your part is done. You gave everything you had, now you must recover. He was right, the mere thought of channeling even a trickle of healing energy made my head swim. I allowed him to guide me away from the altar through the quiet, somber activity. Wolves bowed their heads as we passed, their eyes no longer holding awe for a legend but deep, heartfelt respect for a person who had fought for them. We reached the healer's tents. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and blood. Sophie was there, her face smudged with dirt and tears, expertly binding a wound on a young warrior's arm. She saw us and rushed over, throwing her arms around me in a fierce hug before checking me over with a healer's eye. "You're exhausted but whole," she pronounced, relief flooding her features. "Thank the moon." She found a quiet cot for me in a corner. Nathaniel hovered, unwilling to leave. "I need to report to my father to help with." "Go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "They need you." "I'm safe here." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be back." His hand brushed mine, a brief warm contact before he turned and melted into the organized chaos. Sophie brought me a bitter, restorative tea. As I sipped it, the sounds of the camp began to filter back in, not as a terrifying cacophony, but as the signs of a community healing, surviving. The distant howl of a wolf was not a battle cry, but a mourning song for the fallen. Ghost found his way to me, pushing his head under my hand. I stroked his fur, drawing comfort from his steady presence. He had fought, he had survived. As the tea worked its magic and a deep, bone-weary sleep began to pull me under, my last thoughts were not of the king, or the blinding power, or the sealing of the veil. They were of Nathaniel's hand on my shoulder, of Sophie's hug, of the bowed heads of warriors, of the ember of warmth still glowing inside me. The white Luna had done her duty. Now, perhaps, Evelyn could finally live. I slept for a day and a night, a deep, dreamless sleep of utter depletion. When I finally awoke, sunlight was streaming through the opening of the healer's tent, carrying the ordinary, comforting smells of wood smoke and cooking food. The profound silence of the aftermath was gone, replaced by the bustling, purposeful sounds of a camp breaking down and a people moving forward. Sophie was dozing in a chair beside my cot. Ghost lifted his head from where he lay at my feet, thumping his tail once. The simple normalcy of it was almost startling. As I stirred, Sophie's eyes flew open. "You're awake, how do you feel?" I took stock. The crushing exhaustion was gone, replaced by a deep, pleasant lethargy. The world no longer felt muted. My senses were still sharp. I could hear the conversations outside, smell the pine on the breeze, but they were mine again, not overwhelming. The silvery ember within glowed softly, a quiet, reassuring presence. I felt balanced, whole in a way I never had before. "I feel good," I said, surprised. "Tired but good," she beamed. "Elder Maeve said you would." She called it integration. "The power that's left is part of you now, not something separate." Her smile faded a little. "There's to be a gathering at midday, for the fallen and for what comes next." The weight of that settled on me, the morning and the future. Nathaniel arrived shortly after, carrying a tray of food. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, but his posture was relaxed, the battle stress gone from his face. Seeing me awake and alert, a genuine smile touched his lips, transforming his serious features. "You look better," he said, setting the tray down. "I feel it. How are things?" "Organized. The wounded are stable. We lost 23 in the battle." His voice was somber. "Their pyres are being prepared. The alphas have been in session all morning." "Arguing?" I asked, picking up a piece of bread. "Surprisingly, no. Planning. The cooperation forged in the battle seems to be holding. There's talk of a formal alliance, a permanent council to oversee interpack matters with the summit grounds as a neutral meeting place. The idea was revolutionary. The packs had been territorially isolated for generations, and your father supports it. Donovan supports it." They all saw the strength in unity. He sat on the edge of a nearby cot, watching me eat. "There's also talk about you." I paused. "Me?" "Your role, the title of White Luna is lifelong, but its duties they've changed. The great threat is sealed. The alphas seem to agree you've earned the right to define what comes next for yourself." The freedom in that was both thrilling and daunting. For so long, my path had been dictated by my failure, then by prophecy. Now it was mine to choose. The gathering at midday was held in the stone amphitheater, now cleared of battle debris. Pyres for the fallen, including Marcus's, burned at the far end, their smoke carrying prayers to the moon. The mood was solemn, respectful, but not hopeless. There was grief, but beneath it was the solid foundation of a hard-won victory. Elder Maeve spoke first, offering traditional words for the dead. Then Alpha Harrison stepped forward. "We gather to honor those who gave everything." His voice boomed across the silent crowd. "Their sacrifice secured a peace not just for us, but for generations unborn. They fought not as separate packs, but as one people. That unity is their greatest legacy. Let us carry it forward." One by one, other alphas spoke, echoing the sentiment. The message was clear, the world had changed. Then Harrison turned to me. "Luna, will you speak?" All eyes turned to me. I felt a flutter of nervousness, but the ember within glowed steadily. I walked to the center where the altar stone stood, now just a stone again. I didn't have a prepared speech. I spoke from the ember, from the connection I felt to every wolf present. Yesterday we were Blake and Claw and Fang and River, I began, my voice clear in the hushed space. Yesterday I was the one who couldn't shift, and then I was the white Luna of prophecy. Today we are all simply those who survived, those who remember, those who have to build what comes next. I looked at the faces, seeing their loss, their hope. The power that sealed the veil came from all of you. Your strength, your will to protect your homes and families, that didn't come from a title or a legend, it came from here. I placed a hand over my heart, then gestured to encompass them all. That is what we must remember, that is what we must keep, not just an alliance on paper, but the knowledge that we are stronger together. I saw nods, heard murmured agreements. My duty as the White Luna was to face the threat. That duty is fulfilled. My hope as Evelyn of the Blake Pack is to help build the peace that follows, to ensure the sacrifice of the fallen was not in vain. As I stepped back, a howl rose from the crowd. Not a mournful song, but a strong, unified cry of affirmation and resolve. It was taken up by hundreds of throats, a powerful, vibrating testament to a new beginning. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed to continue packing, Nathaniel found me. That was perfect, he said simply. It was the truth. We walked together away from the amphitheater, toward the edge of camp where the forest began to reclaim the land. The business of the camp continued around us, but in this moment, it felt like a world for just the two of us. The packs begin returning to their territories tomorrow, he said. My father has asked me to stay for a week to help finalize the alliance accords with the other heirs. And after that, I asked, my heart beating a little faster. He stopped walking, turning to face me. After that, I returned to Blake territory, as heir, and I would very much like it if you were to return with me. The question wasn't about politics or prophecy, it was personal, plain, and direct. As what? I asked, needing to hear him say it. As Evelyn. As the woman who has always had my loyalty, even when I was too foolish to show it. As my partner, my equal. His gray eyes were earnest, vulnerable. The future of the packs is a new thing we must build together. But my future, I want to build that with you. The warmth that spread through me had nothing to do with the ember of power and everything to do with the man before me. The years of distance fell away, meaningless in the face of this honest, unwavering offer. Yes, I said, the word feeling right and true. I'll come with you. He didn't kiss me, he didn't sweep me into an embrace. Instead, he reached out and took both of my hands in his, lacing our fingers together. It was a promise, a connection, a beginning. The smile that broke across his face was brighter than the midday sun. Together, hand in hand, we looked out at the camp, at the forest, at the future we had fought for and now had the chance to shape. The White Luna's journey was over. Ours was just beginning. The departure of the packs over the next 2 days was a slow, orderly exodus, a reverse of the enthusiastic convergence that had begun this journey. Now, wagons were loaded not with trade goods, but with wounded and the ashes of the honored dead. Goodbyes were solemn, but underscored by the new bonds forged in fire. I stood with Nathaniel and Harrison, offering formal farewells to each alpha. The deference they showed me was no longer the awestruck kind, but the deep respect owed to a fellow leader who had shared their burden. Alpha Kira clasped my forearm firmly. The Eastern Territories will always welcome you, Luna. Our alliance is sealed in more than words. Donovan gave his characteristic curt nod. You have strength, don't let the peace make you soft. It was, from him, a high compliment. Finally, it was our turn. The Blake Pack contingent was one of the last to leave, as Harrison and Nathaniel finalized the preliminary accords. Our column was smaller than when we arrived, a silent reminder of the cost. Marcus's absence was a palpable void. Sophie walked beside me as we left the summit grounds. She was returning with her father, our Pax Beta. It won't be the same, she said, linking her arm with mine, but it will be better, you'll see, and I'll visit, often, you'd better. The journey back to Blake territory was slower, more reflective. The forest no longer felt threatening, just ancient and alive. I rode a gentle mare, Ghost ranging ahead and then circling back, ever the scout. Nathaniel often rode beside me, our conversations easy, ranging from logistics of the new alliance to memories of our childhood. One evening, as we made camp, Harrison sought me out by the fire. He carried 2 cups of tea, handing one to me. I owe you an apology, Evelyn, he said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet, not just for my treatment of you, but for my blindness. I was so focused on traditional strength, on the purity of the shift, that I failed to see the true strength in front of me. Your parents would be incredibly proud. The words healed a wound I had carried for most of my life. Thank you, Alpha. Harrison, he corrected. In private, at least, you have earned that. He sipped his tea. Nathaniel, he has found his footing through this. He will be a good Alpha, better than I was, because he understands that strength is multifaceted, and he will have you beside him. It was as close to a blessing as I would get from him, and it meant everything. As we neared Blake territory, a familiar landscape of rolling hills and dense pine forests, a different kind of nervousness settled in me. I was returning not as the outcast, but as the Luna and as Nathaniel's chosen partner. How would the pack receive me? We crossed the border at midday. Sentries held our approach, not an alarm, but an announcement. By the time we reached the main settlement, a collection of lodges around a central meeting hall, what seemed like the entire pack had gathered. They lined the path, watching silently. I saw faces I knew, elders who had shaken their heads at me, warriors who had scoffed, mothers who had pulled their pups away. Their expressions were complex: shame, curiosity, awe, hope. Then an elder, a woman who had been particularly harsh, stepped forward. She bowed her head low. "Welcome home, Luna." One by one, the entire pack followed suit, bowing, kneeling, a wave of acceptance and respect. It was overwhelming. Tears pricked my eyes. This was the home I had always wanted, never believing I could have it. Nathaniel's hand found the small of my back, a subtle, supportive touch. "They see you," he murmured. Finally, life in the pack settled into a new rhythm. The title of Luna came with responsibilities, mediating disputes, advising Harrison and Nathaniel, using the faint remnant of my healing ability for the sickest or most injured. It was work that felt right, rooted in community rather than prophecy. Nathaniel and I fell into a partnership that felt natural. We trained together in the mornings, him honing his combat skills, me learning to control and understand the ember of power I retained, which seemed to manifest most strongly as empathy and a deep connection to the land. We attended council meetings together, our perspectives often complementing each other. In the evenings, we would walk, talking of everything and nothing, or sit in comfortable silence, the unspoken bond between us growing stronger each day. One such evening, a month after our return, we stood on a ridge overlooking the settlement. Lights twinkled in the lodges below, a picture of peaceful normalcy we had fought to preserve. "The alliance accords are nearly complete," Nathaniel said. "The first formal council meeting will be at the next full moon at the summit grounds." "A full moon for unity, not fear," I mused. "Exactly." He was quiet for a moment. "My father is talking of stepping down sooner rather than later. He says the new era needs a new Alpha." I looked at him. "Are you ready?" "I am, with you here." He turned to face me, the last light of dusk painting his features in gold and shadow. "Evelyn, the traditions, the mate bonding ceremony, I don't want to rush you, we have time, but I want you to know my intention. When you are ready, I want to stand before the pack and before all the allied packs and pledge myself to you, not for politics, for us." My heart felt too full for words. The promise of a future, a normal, happy future built on choice and love, was a gift I had never dared dream of. "I am ready," I said, my voice sure, "not for a ceremony tomorrow, but for the path that leads to it, with you." He smiled, that rare, full smile that reached his eyes. He didn't kiss me. Instead, he took my hand and brought it to his lips, pressing a solemn, chaste kiss to my knuckles. It was a vow, old-fashioned and deeply sincere. Then he simply held my hand, and we watched the stars emerge over our home together. The return to the summit grounds under the next full moon was a journey filled with a sense of momentous occasion, but devoid of dread. The stones of the amphitheater, once the site of a desperate battle, now hosted representatives from all 12 packs in peaceful conference. A permanent structure was being planned, but for now, a great pavilion had been erected. Inside, a round table had been built, a powerful symbol of equality. The Alphas, their heirs, and key advisors were present. I sat between Harrison and Nathaniel, not as a mystical figurehead, but as an honored council member in my own right. The atmosphere was one of cautious optimism. Old grievances and territorial disputes were laid on the table, not with aggression, but with the understanding that a new system was needed to resolve them. The first day was spent ratifying the formal alliance, the Pact of the Sealed Veil. It established the Permanent Council, rules for mutual defense, trade agreements, and a system for mediating interpack conflicts. My role was defined as Luna Emeritus, an advisor with a voice but no territory, a living symbol of the unity that made the pact possible. On the second day, a challenge arose, a dispute between the Western Claw, Donovan's pack, and the Southern Fang over hunting rights in a border forest threatened to derail the proceedings. Voices were raised, old suspicions flared. Harrison, as the senior alpha, called for order. Then he looked at me. "Luna, you see the heart of matters. What is your counsel?" All eyes turned to me. This was not about magic or prophecy, it was about people and land. I closed my eyes for a moment, reaching for that ember of connection. I couldn't read minds, but I could feel the emotions in the room: Donovan's fierce pride in his pack's self-sufficiency, the Southern Alpha's fear for his people's resources, the underlying anxiety that this new system might fail. I opened my eyes. "This forest," I said calmly. "It has been a border and a battleground for generations. You both claim it out of need and history, but the forest itself does not know packs." I paused, an idea forming. What if it became neither Western nor Southern? What if, under the protection of this new council, it became a shared preserve, a neutral ground where hunting is managed jointly, ensuring sustainability for both packs, and a place where your young wolves can train together, building the bonds we will need for the future? Silence followed. It was a radical suggestion, ceding perceived territory for collective benefit. Donovan scowled. "Why should we give up what is ours?" The Southern Alpha, a man named Torv, looked thoughtful. "Because," he said slowly, "if we fight over it, we lose men and the game is scared away. If we share it, both packs gain." The debate that followed was intense but civil. With Elder Maeve and several others offering tweaks, the proposal was eventually accepted. It was the first major test of the council, and it had been passed not by force but by compromise and forward thinking. After the session, Nathaniel found me by the sacred pool, now just a place of beauty again. "You were remarkable today," he said. "You didn't command. You showed a better way." "It's just common sense," I said, though I was pleased. "It's leadership, a different kind than my father's or Donovan's, the kind we need now." He looked at the pool's reflective surface. "The ceremony, I've been thinking. With the council established and this first meeting a success, perhaps it is the right time to make our partnership official before all the packs, a celebration of the new era and of us." The thought filled me with a joyful warmth. "I think that's a wonderful idea." The final day of the council was devoted to planning the ceremony. It would be held at the next gathering in 3 months' time, a summer ceremony. It would be simple, focusing on vows of loyalty and partnership before the packs in the moon, followed by a feast celebrating the alliance. As the packs prepared to depart once more, the mood was entirely different from the previous leave-taking. There was energy, hope, a sense of shared purpose. The summit grounds were no longer just a meeting place, they were the heart of a new nation. On the journey back to Blake territory, I rode with a light heart. The past was settled. The present was full of meaningful work. The future was a promise I would make under the summer moon to the man who had seen me when I was invisible and who now walked proudly at my side. Ghost ran ahead, chasing butterflies in a sun-dappled meadow, a picture of simple, untroubled joy. I smiled. We had fought for this peace, now we would live in it. Summer transformed the Blake territory. The pines stood dark green against a bright sky, meadows exploded with wildflowers, and the air hummed with life. The settlement was abuzz with activity, but now it was in preparation for a celebration, not a battle. The mate bonding ceremony between the air and the Luna was an event that captured the imagination of all the allied packs. For weeks, guests arrived: alphas, betas, warriors, and friends from every territory. Sophie arrived early, of course, taking charge of the decorations with exuberant efficiency. The ceremony was to be held at the sacred grove within our territory, a beautiful clearing around an ancient oak. As the day approached, a strange calm settled over me. This was a choice, my choice, and it felt more right than anything ever had. The morning of the ceremony, Sophie helped me dress in a simple gown the color of moonlight, woven with silver threads that echoed the pattern of my pendant, which I would wear. "No crown, no symbols of office beyond that. You look like you," Sophie said, her eyes misty. "Happy, I am." Outside the lodge, I could hear the gathered packs, a murmur of hundreds of voices. Harrison waited for me. Tradition dictated the Alpha would present me. "You honor our family," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely showed. He offered his arm. We walked together through the settlement to the grove. The packs lined the path, but instead of bowing, they smiled, they nodded, they reached out to touch my gown gently as I passed, gestures of affection and welcome. The grove was breathtaking. Garlands of summer flowers hung from the trees, and the assembled wolves formed a great circle. At the far end, under the spreading branches of the oak, stood Nathaniel. He wore traditional dark clothing, but his posture was relaxed, his eyes fixed on me with a warmth that made my breath catch. Harrison led me to the center of the circle, then placed my hand in Nathaniel's. His fingers closed around mine, firm and sure. Elder Maeve, who had made the journey to officiate, stood before us. She spoke not just to us, but to all gathered. "We are here not just to join two souls, but to celebrate the unity they represent. They stood together when darkness threatened. Now they choose to walk together into the light of a new day." She turned to Nathaniel. Nathaniel Blake, heir to your pack and to this alliance, do you pledge your loyalty, your strength, and your heart to Evelyn to stand as her partner in all things? His gray eyes never left mine. I do. I pledge my life to our people and my heart to you, Evelyn, today and always. Maeve turned to me. Evelyn, Luna and heart of this new hope, do you pledge your wisdom, your compassion, and your heart to Nathaniel to stand as his partner in all things? I looked at Nathaniel, at the man who had become my anchor, my equal, my future. I do. I pledge my life to our people and my heart to you, Nathaniel, today and always. Then by the authority of the moon and the witness of all packs, Maeve declared, her voice ringing through the grove, your bond is sealed. Let the unity you represent guide us all. A great, joyous howl erupted from the crowd, a sound of pure celebration that shook the leaves of the ancient oak. Nathaniel didn't kiss me then in front of everyone. Instead, he raised our joined hands high, presenting our union to the packs. It was a gesture of sharing our joy, of including them in this new beginning. The feast that followed lasted long into the night. There was music, storytelling of the great battle already becoming legend, and dancing. I danced with Harrison, with a surprisingly graceful Donovan, and with many others. But the best was a slow dance with Nathaniel as fireflies sparkled in the summer dark. No more prophecies, he murmured as we moved together. No more wars, just this is enough, I agreed, resting my head against his shoulder. More than enough. Later, as the celebrations began to wind down, we stole away from the fires, walking to the same ridge where we had watched the stars months before. The settlement below was quieting, the lights twinkling like fallen stars. Nathaniel turned to me, the moonlight silvering his hair. Evelyn, he said, my name a prayer on his lips. Finally, in the privacy of the night, with only the moon and the stars as witness, he leaned in and pressed his lips to mine. It was not a kiss of passion, but of promise, sweet, gentle, and filled with all the love and hope we had fought for. It was a beginning, the true start of our life together. When we parted, he kept his forehead resting against mine. I love you, he whispered, the words simple and profound. I love you, too. Hand in hand, we walked back toward the lights of home, toward our future. The White Luna's story had ended with the sealing of the veil. Ours was just opening, a story of peace, of unity, and of a love that had been there all along, waiting for its time to shine. Even the smallest light, I thought, touching my pendant, finds its place in the dawn.